Have fun, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Actually, hi guys, my name is Valentin Kononov, and I'm really amazed to see so big amount of people, especially on 4:30 p.m. after so much interesting technical talks. So I'm really amazed and surprised that you're not sleeping somewhere. Right. So thank you so much for coming. And it's my first visit of Angel Vikings. I'm really excited about that, and thanks to all organizers. So I will be talking about the bad practices. And again, it's so much of you wanted to know the bad stuff to do, right? But we'll see how it's going on. Just a couple of words about myself. Initially, I came from a .NET background, and even 2 years ago, I practically didn't touch Angular and TypeScript at all, but I'll tell you a story about that a little bit. Now I'm working as a full stack developer. I'm working in Minsk in a company called Acquio. You might have probably know it and heard about it by our Nginx admin dashboard, or maybe even Nebular, which is a framework for Angular. A little bit looks like Material, but slightly different. We'll have a new release soon, right after Angular 8. So, and let me tell you, what I'm talking about, you will be able to check slides on slides.com. Just Google for Valentin Kononov Angular bad practices. And all the samples are available open source in the GitHub. Again, just Google Valentin Kononov Angular bad practices. Some of samples will be step-by-step, some will be combined a little bit, but you will be able to play with it if you want. If not, it's absolutely okay. And my Twitter is also here, and I will be absolutely glad to answer any of your questions. Let me tell you a story about that. As I mentioned, about 2 years ago, I didn't touch Angular at all, but I was kind of tired of things I'm doing, and I was thinking like, okay, I want to learn Angular and stuff, so how would I do it? Okay, I bought a book. I bought a book about the min stack with Node.js, Angular, Express, and stuff like that. I read it, I tried a couple of samples, but it was enough. It wasn't enough. It was good, but wasn't enough. So I started to read some articles, watch YouTube videos about that. But at the end of the day, you just come out to the point that you need to start doing something. Otherwise, it's no way you learn something new before you start doing it. So I changed my, I actually ended up changing my company and getting a new project with Angular. And I get some kind of starter kit and start doing some Angular and TypeScript code. I will tell you about my impression of it a little bit later, but here is the idea. When you just start doing something, at some point of time, you just trying to implement a new feature, something new which you didn't do before. You need to Google it. You need to find some answers on Stack Overflow and stuff like that. You get some errors, you find things how to fix it, again, maybe on Stack Overflow, stuff like that. Maybe not every time it's absolutely best practice, and you promise yourself, I'll fix it. Yeah, tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow, maybe after the next release, and it's still keep that pile of technical debt is growing, 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 and so on. So maybe some of the samples here will look a little bit familiar to you. Don't need to raise your hands, but just think about how you can improve it. And actually, my goal is that at least some of you tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, when you get back to your work, open your Angular project and change at least a little bit to make it slightly better. Maybe not in existing code, maybe in some new features. If you do something, I would be absolutely happy that it's all for some purpose. So let's get back to actually some business. And the first sample will be pretty simple. Actually, when I was Googling a lot about that, we'll use RxJS. Yeah, starting from Angular 5.5 or something, we cannot actually imagine how Angular can look like without RxJS, without pipeable operators and stuff. But still, even at the moment, you can find out a lot of different articles like do not import the whole file, import just the pipeable operators, so it will be tree shakeable and stuff like that. So I did an absolutely stupid and simple sample, just like that. I hope it's visible, maybe not so, but maybe I can just make it. Yeah, kind of like that. It's just a couple of pipeable operators and some service which brings you observable. So it's no way you do it otherwise in Angular. You ought to use the pipeable operators, but everyone tells that using the pipeable operator gives you a true shakeable stuff and so on. So I try to measure the size of a bundle with this and without that. It's nearly the same. So later I found out that you get this benefit of true shaking at the moment. So I understand there is Ivy, which Ivy is near and which will be pretty soon. But even if you want to do to get some real benefits of build size right now at the moment, you just need to install Angular DevKit build optimizer. Just one additional npm command and the additional library in package.json will give you a boost. So to measure that boost, I used Webpack bundle analyzer, and results are like this. So without it, it was like 314 kilobytes. Pretty simple app, but still. With it, it's 23 kilobytes less, just with one npm shot. I think it's worth it. Just try it. One more thing. It was for me, it was a long story when I actually managed myself to start using Angular. And I blamed the TypeScript for it. Only a TypeScript gave me an opportunity and possibility to actually work on the front end. Because coming from a .NET background, you're so familiar with types, with compilation process and stuff, so you cannot imagine how you can write something down and even cannot check that it's, okay, will it work or not? So what I will see at the end of the day, right? So with TypeScript, you have this possibility, but you have the tweak with any. And a lot of pure JavaScript guys, I believe, who likes just pure JavaScript? Let's raise your hand. Oh, it's not a bit bigger. Okay, fine. I know a lot of pure JavaScripters who hate TypeScript, who hate that stuff because you actually need to type some interface and it's boring stuff. But let's take a look what it gives you. So again, who watched the last episode of Game of Thrones recently? Practically everyone. It was questionable, right? The same is about the any word. It's kind of questionable, but for initial moment of using TypeScript, it gives you opportunity for some flexibility. So you can just define some movie variable, which will have several properties like name, and you can use it. So with this, with syntaxes like this, it will work. It will fine. But what if at one point of time we understand that the word name is not so good for movie title, and we decided to change it like that? What will be next? It will run, everything will be fine, but in some message you will see undefined word. But no errors, absolutely. You will be able to deploy it to some cloud and everything will be fine, but your QA guy or even your user will see that something is wrong. But so it's not like I actually want it. Yeah, you will see just undefined. One guy actually told me once that statical code analysis gives you possibility to print 30% of errors without a single run of application. And TypeScript gives you this possibility. You just need to use it. So just get usage of TypeScript like that. So if you will define the interface and you will define something, and then after some point of time you change something, you will have a compilation error. And you will not even need to ask someone to test that because you will see that just in your console. So think about it. Think about it, how much time it can save you just because you spend additional couple of minutes to define an interface. Actually, frankly speaking, I really miss that in Node.js development. But the guy in another room, he's talking about a nest which uses TypeScript. Think about it. It's pretty nice also. OK, moving on. What do we have in Angular? Practically everything in Angular, which is not ng module, as we learned from Lars, is a component. So we have a lot of components. And components can have different relationships. So let's take a look at a sample. At the bottom, we have the child component, which is some simple expandable component. So it wraps something. It can expand, collapse, and stuff like that. And we want to make it kind of controllable from outside. So for example, it's a menu. And we want to expand it once we understand what to show. Like, OK, I'm a user. I logged into application. I need to choose something like region where I'm working in. And only after that, I will see the expanded menu with some items. So it could be a purpose. And in this sample, you see that we actually have a reference to child component, and we actually call the function of child component from parent. What do you think about it? It's actually very bad because you introduce additional dependency for the component. Because with this sample, you make the component dependent from outer space, but in such a way that someone should know the API. Someone should actually call a function. And you're kind of cheating a little bit the Angular framework and its change detection stuff and things like that. The much better way is to make the component dependent only on its inputs. So just to pass kind of input variable like expanded or collapsed. Of course, it's a simplified sample, but it gives you a sense that if you design your components dependent only on inputs, you can end up with practically independent component. You can put it anywhere, and it will work as you expect. And the good benefit, you can use the on-push change detection strategy as well, because you have inputs, and you expect that component will change something after you change the inputs. That's a very good thing to know. OK, let's get to some really nice and important business. What do we do in Angular in most cases? Actually, the purpose of most of our application is to show some data. To show some data, to manipulate some data, probably save it at some point of time. But first, we need to show it. And right now, we have absolutely great instruments for that. From RxJS, we have observables. We can subscribe, and we can see some results, like in these samples. So I didn't put the whole component. I just put a couple of functions like init and destroy with a couple of console logs to see how it's going on. So for sample purposes, I implemented some timer, which will push the new value every second. And we have some kind of UI component which shows what this timer gives us. So what do you think about it? What is pretty wrong and pretty bad with that? Any ideas? I really would like to hear that. Right, we miss, it's pretty obvious, we miss unsubscribe sync. So if we keep it like it is, we will end up with this console log. So basically, when we navigate back from that component, we still keep having the subscription. And this subscription still keep listening to observable. When we navigate to this component again and back, we will have two subscriptions. And more and more and more, and it will never end up until you will close the browser tab, or will close browser again. So it's usually called a kind of memory leak. So how to fix it? The obvious solution, how to fix it, of course, it's unsubscribe, right? So if we subscribe to something, we can actually save this subscription and manually unsubscribe it. This is absolutely straightforward way to do it, and it actually does the work. So you have absolutely clear logs. So you initialize the component, you have several observable emissions, then you destroyed nothing. You cleared up this piece of memory, nothing is running. But what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? We need to do it, right? One guy here at one talks mentioned why developers were lazy. We don't want to do additional stuff. Yeah. For this piece of code, we need to unsubscribe. We need to do it. And if we have several subscriptions, like 2 or 3, we need to at least save to some array all of our subscriptions and so on. So before we get to TakeUntil, we have the TakeWhile operator, which was one of suggested ways, maybe a year ago, something like that. And I personally used it a lot in one of the projects until I find out the better ways. And now I use another way, and I will get to it. So with TakeWhile, TakeWhile will take care of your subscription. But there is an interesting thing. So you use it pretty simple. You just put it into a pipe, and you put some kind of predicate which will tell the TakeWhile operator, so should it keep subscription or can it kill it? actually. And you need to, so usually it's solved by having a variable with alive equal true, and on destroy you make it equal false. So that's pretty easy to use. It's popular because it's easy to use. But as a result, take a look here. So I put a console log with word check on each take while operator check, actually. And in console log, we have everything as expected, but when we get component destroyed, we still have one more check at the end. That's because of nature of this take while operator. It still keeps subscription and keeps waiting until the next time observable emit. And only after that, it's checking the variable or the predicate and understand, OK, I don't need this subscription anymore. I don't need this value. I can kill it. But so it's fine. It's totally fine in most cases, but you should just keep remember that when you navigate back from that component, you will still have something waiting, some subscription. So as this person mentioned, we have the next possibility, which is slightly better. It's TakeUntil. It will do the job as we expect. So I can just jump a little bit ahead, and you will see the console log, which is absolutely clear. So destroyed and nothing else. But this thing is working like to prevent the subscription. To use it, you need to create the kind of subject, which you will emit by calling subject.next when you need to destroy your subscription, actually when you destroy your component. And this TakeUntil waits for this subject to be hit, and then it killed the subscription. So it works like expected, but as a first variant, when we did the manual unsubscribe, we need to take care about that. Maybe it's a bit easier than saving like 3 or 4 different subscriptions, but still, you need to, in every component, you need to put this code to ng on destroy, and you need to keep that subject to unsubscribe. So, oh yeah, and one more thing, the pipe. Pipe means that in RxJS, pipe means that you can put several handlers there, several operators like take, map, switch map, something like that. And if you use TakeUntil, you should know that it should be last. It should be the last one in any case. If you will have at least one operator after that, it will simply not work, just because of its nature, again. So it's a good thing, but it's a little bit tricky to use at some times, so you just need to keep remember about it. So what is the solution? What is the better solution? You know, I know that. Tell us. Right, exactly. The next option, which is actually one of the best variants, is usage of async pipe. So it's pretty simple. The idea is that you use your observable right inside of a template, and you put an async pipe of Angular right on it. It's pretty easy to use with the simple observables, which just gives you some value. But sometimes you need to get the object from observable, so and use it in several places of template. So to achieve that, you probably need to wrap it into some ng container, or wrap it to another component. So it will be just a little bit easier, and it will follow the Angular idea to have the different components, the smaller pieces, and stuff like that. So I also added the pipe on top just for the purpose of testing to put a console log here. And I see the clear console log, so component initialized, several times observable pushed, then component destroyed, nothing's happening. And everyone's happy, actually. It's pretty easy to use, and we use it a lot in our projects at the moment. The only thing to know here is, and it's very good to use with on-push strategy for the components. But again, just remember, every time when your observable will emit a new value, async pipe will be working, and this component will be marked for check, for change detection. So even if the value of observable is the same. So usually it's fine. When you emit new observable, you expect something to render again. But just keep remember that every time observable emits, you will have the mark for check, and it will work. And I asked Max Koretsky on his talk about this case, and he told me, so if you don't have zone.js, this will not work. So just because of change detection nature and stuff like that. So be careful. If you wanted to go some experimental way and turn off the zone.js and stuff like that, this is a little bit tricky. So probably you need to handle it a little bit differently. But still, it's a pretty good solution, I think. Yeah, so as I'm talking about. Actually, that is the most incredible and most important thing I want to tell you, but I have something else. Yeah. As I mentioned, as a developers, we're a little bit lazy at some point of time, and I personally lazy to keep testing stuff a lot, keep reviewing my code a lot, and stuff like that. So there is a good tool, absolutely great tool called TSLint. Who knows TSLint? Who knows Linter? Okay. Who use it? Cool. Glad. I'm really glad. So the idea is that you set up your pre-push hook with checking the linter errors, and it will just prevent you until you use force push. It will prevent you to push incorrect code. And here on this slide, I put a little bit of linter rules, which helps you with the subscriptions, with the observables and stuff like that. So if you have several team members on a project and you want to keep tracking of that subscriptions and stuff, don't want to memory leaks, you can use things like no ignore subscription and other important stuff like no ignored error. And it will mean that you should always put catch when you subscribe and stuff like that. This is really important. So as you remember in the beginning of this talk, as a TypeScript has statical code analysis, this is additional stuff for statical code analysis, which will help you to prevent some additional % of errors. And your QA team will be just smoking at the corner of a room and observing the nicely working application. That's something which I wanted all the time. Yeah, and the last one is like RxJS prefer async pipe. So it will force you a little bit to use async pipes. But again, there are cases when you should go a different way. Just think what is better for your particular case. OK, moving on. What is the first programming concept you learn when you learn programming? Except of variables, yeah, except of variables, you learn how the loop works, right? You learn like something like for each, ng4, and we use it a lot. So let's take a look on an example of code which you all should be familiar with. It's a simple ng4, right? And at the keynotes, Christian talked about the new feature with the virtual scrolling. Actually, with this new feature, you probably might not need to hear this part of my slides, but still, maybe you will not be able to use this at the moment. So let's talk about it. So we have an ng4, we have some kind of collection of items, and we have just a button sort, like sort items, ascending or descending, and that's it. So what will happen, actually, when it's sorted? I put and inside of ng4, we have another component, right? So this is the trick. And in that inner component, I put just a console log in initialization and ng on destroy hooks. So you see this log, which happened after I clicked the sort button 2 or 3 times. So every time when I need to resort, Angular will render, will clean up the whole piece of DOM for this ng4 and fill it with the new elements. Why is it happening? Because when Angular understands that this collection was changed and the reference to this collection is new, Angular will iterate it again. And if references to each object is new, which could be a case when you get objects from a backend, for example, and you actually construct them on a runtime, Angular will need to work with DOM to extract what was in DOM and put there the new version of it, even if it's the same. So in the simple case, it's absolutely OK. But we all know that if we have the huge collection of items, like thousands of items, and we need to iterate on that, Angular probably not the absolutely best guy to do it. So there is a possibility to help Angular to track these objects by using a track by. So you simply put a track by function, which will return something meaningful, something which identifies the object, right? And Angular will use it to identify should it render again this piece of DOM, or should it keep it like it is? So with this change of this sample, I have just a 3 console logs because I have 3 items in the collection. And every time I click the sort button again and again, Angular will just restructure the DOM, and the component will not be initialized again. Will not go through its cycle. So ng destroy will not hit. Initialize will not be hit again. So it saves CPU. It saves efforts. So reduce the carbon footprint and stuff like that, right? You know, we all go green. So why not to help it, even with a little bit of effort, right? And OK, that's it with this sample. But let's take a step further. I'm going to tell you a story about my project. So a couple of years ago, when I started learning Angular, I had a project for the company who has a lot of legacy legal documents. So they're lawyers. They have a lot of legal documents. And we were building kind of application to store the hundreds and thousands of legal documents and to let the users sort it, find the new needed document, just accrued operations with that and stuff like that. And they had a requirement like when the user gets on some page, he should see all the several hundreds of documents at once. So you know it's crazy. And the fact is that each document will have the 2 or 3 the big text fields, like text area with a couple of thousand of symbols, and about a dozen in other fields. It's huge. And even the first run was very long. So the solution we came with is to wrap each component inside of that looping, inside of that ng4, with something expandable, and to use ng-if inside. So it's a pretty simple concept. We simply don't put what we don't show to DOM. So we will render only what is actually visible right now and what is actually needed right now. So the results was absolutely great. So several hundreds of components were rendered just at once. And that's because the DOM was pretty empty. So you see that bindings and greflect and gif, just commented piece of code inside of DOM. It's nothing there. And Angular will put the actual tags and components only when we expand it. So it's a nice trick if you will have a necessity to show the big amount of things. So just show a little bit of information. Just a couple of fields, like name and maybe some date, some ID, and stuff like that. And it will be enough for user to identify which one he want to work with, and then expand it and work with it. So without affecting DOM, and again, reducing the carbon footprint by having less CPU. But let's take a look on this sample again. There is a really bad thing here I put intentionally. So who knows that? There is a So this expandable component has a couple of inputs. One is label, and another one actually expanded or collapsed, right? And for label, I put usage of function. Using of, it's here, direct using of function inside a template is pretty bad, because Angular will use it every time. Even if every time it runs rendering, even nothing is changed, even if there is no use, but it will still have it run. So after each sort, I will have this get label called, and it will be just huge a lot. How can we get rid of it? Again, using a pipe. Angular has pipe, so you need to use it because it's just an incredible mechanism. Why it's so good? First of all, it's by design. Angular created a pipes to use exactly some handlers inside the templates. So it's very nice. It's very easy to implement. It's just a single function transform and a couple of arguments which you can play with. And that's it. you have these calls. So you see, I still have console log in a pipe. And I have only 3 times of that console log calling, even after I keep sorting and sorting and sorting this loop again. So pipe will be called only once. But I need to say that there are 2 types of pipes in Angular, right? Right. There is. It's actually kind of pure pipes and how? Not pure pipe, right? Pure and not pure pipes. And the default is a pure pipe. It's pure because it's cached and because it's independent on it's stateless. Yeah, the proper word for that it's stateless. So whenever you put some argument in it, the output should be the same, independently on any other factors. So that's why this gives Angular a possibility to cache it, right? And if you put the additional declaration inside the pipe, like it's not pure, like async pipe, for example, is not pure, right? It will be different. So it doesn't make sense to use a lot on pure pipes, but it makes sense to know about it and just to understand how it's functions. But let's take a step further. Imagine we have this kind of list of movies we wanted to show in our loop, and for some reason, the field we want to show as item identifier for a couple of items is the same. Like for a Big Bang Theory, we have the parent ID, like the serial of a Big Bang is the same. And if we take a look to console log for this case, we will have the 2 times for item 3 label call. And again, item 3 label call. What's happening? We just said that pure pipes will be cached and everything will be fine, it's stateless. But we see it was called 2 times. The thing is that by its nature, the caching process for pure pipes is starting right after the change detection completed. I mean, in the next round of change detection. So when you iterate through the collection for the very first time, it's before any single change detection for this component was happening, and Angular will not track it. But after that, it will work. So it's good to know about this feature because if you will end up with a case when you have the several thousands of items with nearly the same labels. Just, for example, you show in the status of your order, right? And you have only 3 different statuses, but thousands of items. So for this particular case, you should think about some additional caching, which you can implement right inside the pipe. I didn't put a sample here because I believe everyone would like to do it their own way. But if you will Google for Minko Getchov posts about the pipes, you will find a sample with Memoize library usage, which covers exactly the same case when you need to cache even before the next round of change detection. So basically, this is the most important things I want to talk about it. Just to sum up, we talked a lot about the subscription and observables, just because it's very important thing in Angular, in RxJS, and it's very important to know the nature of it and how to work with it. And so I don't want to say we decided. I decided for me that usage of async pipes is the most beneficial way because you just don't need to make too much work and you get the good results, but you can choose the way you want, and but keep it consistent, right? The good thing about a good quality application is that the different components are done in a similar way, in a similar code style, with the similar ideas of how you bind your data. We're talking about the pipes, about 2 types of pipes and how to use it. We talked about the iterations and track by, and I believe that the good piece of that story is about any and getting actually benefits of a TypeScript with not using any, with using exact interfaces. That's very good. And probably one more thing, which I would like you to think about later, it's kind of state management, because it's also pretty important. If you have the different data with a lot of relationships and you would like to track the state of it, think about it, how to do it in a consistent way in application. Probably it will help you to get rid of the default change detection strategy and get on the next performance level, or maybe to make your code better. But anyway, and the most important thing, enjoy your coding. Enjoy the way you do things. Enjoy how you do everyday work. This is my dog. Thanks a lot, guys. My Nordic dog.
Thank you.